Yeah, so I started as a silverware polisher, and I had never worked in a restaurant, and I went in to ask for a job. I had just moved to Hawaii, and my cousin was living there, and I was like living on her couch essentially, and she knew this fancy restaurant called Roy's Kahana in Maui. And she said, go ask for a job there. They make a lot of money. And I was like, well, that's cool. I want that. So I went and asked for a job,
Yeah.
and they're like, have you ever worked in a restaurant? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, like, what makes you think that you were gonna be able to hang here? We're a very busy restaurant, blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm a very good worker. Like, just give
Yeah.
me a chance. Like, don't worry about it. I can handle myself. And so he's like, okay. He's like, we'll start you in the back. And I worked in the dish pit,
Wow.
polishing silverware and polishing glassware. And then I moved up to barback, and I was like hustling ice and, being barback. And then I was a busser. Before anyone was even calling them like back waiters. There were no
Backwaiters,
back
yeah.
waiters back then. I was
Yeah.
a fucking busser.
Yeah.
I was a
It
busser.
is what it is back then. Like, look,
It
you
is what
bust
it
the
is.
table.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Pretty much held every job in the front of the house, right? Then
Yep.
you ultimately became the wine director of the April Bloomfields, the Spotted Pig, then the Breslin, the John Dory Oyster Bar, New York City, and then you eventually took on the strenuous task of growing wine as a somm, which
Yeah.
before is my understanding that it was a family thing, generational thing. You started it and it's passed on, but you bought one of the oldest Grenache vineyards in South Australia. So like you've accomplished a lot. You've been featured in the Wall Street Journal regularly, Wine Enthusiast, New York Times. You also were dubbed in the Queen of Sherry by Village Choice. Um,
Woo-hoo.
and you also appeared on an episode of 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
And also your approach to relaxation, you've been listed in the new faces of Australia in the Wine Spectator and also the Winery to Watch in 2017. Doing all that, all these great accomplishments, I'm really curious to like what your grassroots story is like coming up. Your first restaurant job came in when you were 20, when you were 21. You went to NYU for acting. What was like home like? Was there a hospitality influence at all?
There was none. I grew up in Southern California, in a very, very small town in the Santa Ana Mountains. So and this was like country living. Like we would chop firewood in the mornings in order to like have a wood burning stove. Like it was very,
Wow.
very, very rural and very fantastic. But there, all of that to say, like we didn't go out to restaurants ever, maybe once or twice a year on like Mother's or Father's Day. And it was like, Red Lobster was like the top of the top, like it was no joke. That was like if somebody gave us a gift card.
Those Cheddar Bay biscuits are out of this world.
I still love that shit. You know what I mean? Like because it was special then, it's still special now. Like, and even eating a lot, like we would eat Costco food. That was just where we shopped. And like the chicken cordon bleu, those little frozen fucking pucks, like I grew up on that, and it's still, when I have it today, it zips me back and I still love it. It's fake food, but I still love it because it was connected to something joyful then.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, there was no awareness of hospitality in terms of the restaurant industry. I did learn hospitality, and I was able to kind of walk this back a few years ago from my grandmother.
Yeah.
Rachel Rzuski was her name, and she was a fantastic baker, and a great cook. And she would cook. Her showing of love was feeding people, and so anytime we would come over, all of the attention and all of the kind of community, and all of the talk and all of the sometimes crying and all the laughter would be around food. And I realized just a few years ago that I fell in love with how that made me feel. What she gave to me, what she gave to everyone. Like she held everything together when we had these family gatherings, like every holiday or whatever. And it's real magic to be able to feed people and make them feel welcome and safe, and to just show love in that way.